bountiful kind of feast for us to dig into. Allow me to start with James. Part of that is because any other technological snafus that we have, he will figure out from Ireland. And secondly, clearly, David's first and fourth point are so relevant to his work. As you've circulated around, to my right, James, in our hall here, there's a poster celebrating your work, so everybody here has gotten familiar with it. But my class learned through our Google Hangout with you a couple of days ago how remarkable your work is. So if you might just briefly introduce yourself and then reflect on the four elements that David shared with us, emphasizing, if you don't mind, the first and the fourth as you see it. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so hello, my name is James. So I'm from Ireland, but actually at this moment I'm in Boston. So this is my third day of being an immigrant. So I haven't been deported so far so good. And I'm also one of these terrible people that didn't go to college. So I'm 21 myself, and I started Codorojo as soon as we came out of high school. So Codorojo essentially is this like global movement of running free programming clubs for kids. I've been programming since the age of 9. Some kids had friends growing up buying keyboards. And it was always something that was very close to me, but because there was nowhere to learn, I taught myself in all different ways, from opening up computers to see how they work, to sneaking into university lectures, to learning from books. So I got a very well-rounded view of the various pedagogies for learning programming. As a result, seeing that there was no outlet for this in schools, I went and created the environment that I always wanted, kind of like a breakfast club, but instead of talking about father issues, we talk about servers and nice things. So in the last 2.5 years, we've seen incredible growth. We've gone to 30 countries with over 300 clubs and over 10,000 kids a week who do it, and it's all free. And we've stayed well outside the formal education system. And I think that touching on the point around technology and how that's easing access to education, most definitely Codorojo wouldn't have gotten to this scale and gotten to this point where we've had such incredible reach without it. So the fact that we could mobilize volunteers online, the fact that we could use kind of existing services and tools like Twitter, Facebook, Google Groups, and everything in order to easily kind of deploy dojos. And it's we're entering into this phase now that as society has progressed and we have on-demand access to education. We kind of need to reevaluate what exact skills we need versus and I suppose how we need to learn. For example, back in the day when you didn't have ready access to information, when you had to find out something and you had to open up a massive Britannica to find out something. We look at that now. Wikipedia has killed Britannica. We've seen in a bunch of other spheres in technology, you see that Spotify has killed the iTunes model, Netflix has killed so many Blockbuster and all this. So one of our premises in Codorojo is that we teach kids how to self-teach. So we see it infinitely more valuable that we can get kids to learn how to Google online to find a question, or can Google their question, can find the answer, and can implement it themselves over us just telling them. And by teaching the kind of core fundamental skill sets, because programming is so abstract. Teaching someone to program in just one language is kind of teaching someone how to do art with just a pencil but not a paintbrush or whatever. That they can as a result it massively empowers them. So through this, it's kind of crazy to think from a small backwards town in Ireland. Ireland, they tried to make stuff like divorce illegal again in the late 90s. So we have our quirks. That through just creating resources and materials that has gone out to Africa, that has gone out to Asia, and as a result, not just how we and of course people and cultures vary from place to place, but we've been able to see feedback from these various cultures. People have picked up on different things. They've been able to not only take the resources that we've provided, but edit them and alterate them, translate them, and contribute back. So one of our core mantras is open source, and everything we do is freely available online. It's all transparent, and we encourage people to take it, adjust it, to hack it. So Codorojo in its lifetime has iterated several times in that we've changed our site, we've changed our resources, people have contributed, and even thinking about us as an organization, when all the kids who are 13, 14, 15, 16, or whatever age, in like 5 years' time when they become serious mentors and run clubs, our entire organization will flip on its head because there are kids who've grown up with it, are very intimate with this organization, and will see the problems that we can't see. So most definitely I would say that in terms of education today, not just reevaluating what core skill sets we have and how we teach them in order to empower further learning, but also the resources that we have, kind of putting them out in the world, like having methods where people can edit them, can improve them, and feed them back into the community, and also translate them so that they can have a wider reach is absolutely incredible. So, sorry, that's a very typical Irish digressing.
One of the many reasons we love it. Thank you.
So sorry, I think you're just muted there, John.
There we go. James, can you hear me, everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So that's perfect. Thank you so much. So Urvashi Sami, this is a good moment to turn to you, because in fact I think your work covers all four of the points that David raised and that James has just reflected on. Student-based, sort of from the bottom education, certainly issues around technology, and very much the issue of girls' education. So Digital Study Hall Foundation, share with us as briefly as you can what those are and your thoughts on the themes that are emerging from this conversation.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, Study Hall Education Foundation is an education foundation started in 1986 when technology was not really the buzzword. So it was very much face-to-face, hands-on. We ran schools and we tried to reach out to every kind of population in India that we could, which is the rural populations, urban, slum children, middle class, special needs kids, and we tried to provide quality education in the sense of a problem-solving education. In 2005, I co-founded, along with Randy Wang, who was at the time a professor at Princeton, Digital Study Hall, where we were trying to use technology and very low-cost technology to increase our outreach, to try and provide quality education to people who didn't have any facilities, didn't have very high-skilled teachers. So what we did was we used simple video technology where you just videoed good practices. And you put this curriculum, because internet didn't have a great outreach either, and still doesn't in the remote areas where we work. And the goal was to try and share good teaching practices, to train teachers to begin with face-to-face, but then to give them ongoing support on-site through simple videos, because everyone knows how to use TVs and videos. Indians love watching movies, and to go to places where internet was not yet a reality. So we started that, and we put all our academic content on, and we're still doing that. In fact, we have several thousand videos, and to your point, Wheaton, I forgot your name, it's all open source, it's on YouTube, and the idea was to make it freely available to anyone who needed it. We worked very closely with the government school system. What has happened over time is that we found that it's a very good teacher training tool. We were hoping we would be able to use it in classrooms as well, so that students could access it independently too. Given the power situation in India, even that has been a challenge. So now we're moving to the mobile technology and trying to put all our materials on simple, small mobile, which you can insert into your mobile phone and use it to train yourself, to make it available to children, and to reach out to very remote areas. In terms of girls' education, what we have done is that we literally use critical pedagogy. For those who know it, it was something evolved by Paulo Freire, a great social entrepreneur, political activist, educator. And the idea was that people should talk about their reality in order to transform it. And we've done that with girls. We put all our critical dialogues that we created in Lucknow with our school Prerna. We put them all on video, and we put it all on YouTube, and we took it to all these schools so that girls could watch other girls engaged in discussions about their problems and were inspired to engage in them themselves. We also created a voice forum which helped us to connect students, teachers, and communities virtually in an audio fashion. And we've conducted several activities on that. We've been able to do drama remotely using mobile support. We've been able to do music remotely using mobile support. And the goal is to use whatever technologies are available that are easy to use, that are easily accessible. And what we found we've been doing over time is experimenting as we bump into problems. And power continues to be a huge challenge, so that whatever technology you produce, that's where it begins to bump. And we have to, in India, move on to mobile technology, because that is something that has a huge penetration. And now with smartphones increasing, but even then, internet is not something you can still access. You can't have students access it. Again, it's the cost factor and the fact that it has reached there. But what you can do is, you can use simple chips which you can play on your mobile, almost using the mobile like a handheld, so that people can watch it, and then you use the audio to provide the interactivity and reach out to people in remote locations. So you have to use a multiple, you really have to be a multimodal kind of approach. And it has to be supplemented with a lot of face-to-face. So we do include face visits, though we have to keep them short because of the cost factor and because of the distances that we have to travel. And then we supplement with a lot of mobile technology and with the video technology, which we are trying to compress more and more. So whoever can, and the way it works is that whoever can access internet is able to access it on the YouTube. Whoever has access to TVs and DVDs can use the DVDs. Whoever has access only to mobile is able to use it on their mobile phones. And then we provide audio support from Lucknow, from our hub, to almost everybody, because everybody has a mobile. We even run virtual classrooms where they put it on speakerphone and we're able to talk to them from a distance and have an interactive classroom with them. So.
Oh, that was fantastic. Thank you. Fascinating. And my students and I have watched some of the videos that you have online. We've learned richly from your experience. I wanted to offer a thought that your raising of the work of Paulo Freire, I think, was very important. I was briefly teaching a class 2 years ago on social entrepreneurship and social justice, and many of you in the audience know this too, that Freire, as Rashi just summarized, is the famous educator from Brazil, and his work was about bringing in particular to illiterate women education, but the education was built around their experience. In the words of another great agent of social change, Saul Alinsky, for them to ask where they're at. So they learn literacy through the process of what he calls a consciousness raising. And it occurred to me, Rashi, a couple of years ago, that that's precisely what I was doing. I finally realized that with Middlebury college students, so different in background from those women that Freire was working with, it was essentially of the same kind of education. So I very much appreciate your reference to Dr. Freire. Here's what I'm going to propose now in order. Anjula has joined us, Anjula Tyagi, which I hadn't realized, so you can introduce yourself to, the partner of Lawrence. And I'm going to turn to you now in a moment, because I think the themes of obviously educating girls globally, which you do, which we just heard about working in South Asia as well. And then I want to start to transition as we then go to Angelica and Faith to a couple of other points. One is metrics. So how do we measure success? There are a lot of social entrepreneurs out there. How do we know that any of us is any good? And my sense is that Anjula, that you and Lori and others involved with your Educate Girls Globally have done that well. So if you could maybe bring that into some of your introductory comments. Then I'd like to turn to Angelica, and let's talk a little bit about how you, again, have an open source approach, but also collaborate with the public sector. And I know Lawrence Chickering, we'll circle back to you, but that's an important part of your model. And then let's finish in terms of this opening round with Faith. And in Faith, in some ways, your work is the closest to traditional education, bricks and mortar. Build an extraordinary academy and they will come. But we know from the Google Hangout we did with you a couple of days ago, there's much more to the ALA than that. And I think So does that sound like a good order for everybody? I'll turn to
Sure.
Angela, and then we'll go right to Angelica and Paige, and then I think what we'll do at that point is bring in questions from our colleagues. Everybody wave to our Google Plus folks in that one screen. Here, hold on, we can get you all up. Keep waving. There we go. And with that, I'm going to turn to Angela.
Her microphone is muted.
Angela, we cannot hear you. Angela, we cannot hear you because your microphone is muted, perhaps by you or alternatively by us. Maybe James muted it. How are we doing up top?
Her end. If you could use a mic, that would be great. John?
Keep you must be muted at your end. Is that right, Willa?
Yes.
I think you muted it. I don't think she knows how to mute it.
Okay. So what we're going to do, bear with us, this is verification. What I'm going to do, Angela, is turn to your colleague, Lori, have him jump in, and then if you can sort of maybe sort out, hold on, introduction now. Try it again, Angela, one more time.
She's good.
Yes. Yes.
Hello?
There you are.
Do you hear me now?
Go. Yes, we hear you.
All right. So do you want to start with Lori?
No, you go ahead.
You go ahead.
Okay. My name is Angela Tyagi, and I work for Educate Girls globally. Our focus is on educating girls. Currently, we have programs in India, and we plan to expand to schools in Africa as well. And my colleague Lori will speak more about future expansion plans. But I would like to say something about what we do in our program and how our strategies and approach connect to the discussion today. As I said, our core focus is girls' education, and our program is completely based on getting communities involved into their own developmental processes. What we found in the past that communities have lost the sense of ownership when it comes to their own self-development. And that's what we do in our programs. When it comes to public school systems, there's a lot that needs to be done in the public education system, especially in the developing countries. But due to the complete dependent situations in the communities, they think they have to do nothing with the public schools. We try to mobilize them, we try to inspire them, we try to bring them into the entire discussion of bringing change and transforming the schools. As well as in these traditional communities, what we see that there is a biased approach towards educating girls. And that needs to be transformed as well, which we need to have a dialogue with the community. That's the other thing that we do during our programs, try to empower the communities, try to create a positive discussion among the communities. Why do we need to educate the girls? And motivate them to bring their daughters back to schools. There's another thing that we do is to empower girls themselves, because that's another major challenge in these traditional communities, that girls, the upbringing of the girls is such that they themselves hesitate to come up and speak up what they exactly need. So there's a total, the whole thing of self-realization is missing in the community, and also, as well as among the girls. That's the other thing that we do, and we have programs. We've created groups of girls that we call girls' parliaments that actually work constantly through their own experience to improve their life skills. We do not impart a formal training to to develop life skills, because we believe that the skills are already there, they are hidden. The only thing is that they have to brush up the skills. They have to start thinking that they need those skills, and they have to practice to strengthen those skills. It's all about practicing those skills, and that's what this Girls Party and the platform that we create in the schools actually offers. Another important thing is that we work very much with government schools, and we try to bridge the gap between the community and the government systems. Lori will speak more about the gap that always exists between the government and the public. So that's the other thing that we work with bureaucrats. We try to empower and strengthen their system as well, so we build a kind of trust with the system. As far as technology is concerned, up until now, for the past 10, 12 years, we've been working face-to-face with the community and the girls and the teachers, whether it's training or any empowerment programs with these people. But in recent years, we have found that we definitely need to use technology when it comes to improving classroom teaching and learning process, or it comes to informing the people. So I hear an echo. Hello?
Yeah. Is that better?
Hello?
Is that better?
Hi. Yes, it's a little bit better. Oh, no. I still hear the echo.
Not anymore, you don't. Go. Go.
Angela, so maybe what I'll do,
Yes.
I think you're hearing the echo when I turn on my mic. So that's the issue here. So
Okay.
I can't communicate with you unless I turn on the mic. So let me do this.
Okay.
I'm going to take advantage of the moment you paused, and I'm going to turn to our Middlebury alum, Angelica Town, and then I'm going to circle back to your experience, Educate Girls Globally, as we continue. Thank you for that.
All right.
And let me just do a time check-in with everybody, again, particularly our folks in the Google Plus Hangout. Because of the inevitable technical issues, we got started a little late. I'm looking at East Coast time, it's 11:48. So I'm going to propose that we push this to 10 after, maybe even sort of 12 or 13 after. Is everybody good with that? All right, so let's go with that. I see thumbs up, which is great. So Angelica Town came to Middlebury as a posse scholar, and with her two co-founders of Educate, have been true leaders in this area of social entrepreneurship and the future of education. She was going to be with us at this, running a workshop this afternoon, a fifth workshop, but she couldn't because of some of the travel issues on the East Coast in the last month. So we're so thrilled to welcome her to this hangout. Here you see again, Angelica, your trusted Middlebury compadres who now want to give you a particularly warm welcome.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Great. Awesome. That's wonderful. Well, it's great to be able to even see all of you under the name Ian Thomas. That's great. You guys, you look awesome, and it definitely looks like a great day at Middlebury. Probably really cold, but yeah, it's great to be with you, and I'm really sorry I couldn't be there physically, but I'm hoping to come later on in the year. So I guess by way of introduction, Educate is a nonprofit that I joined when I was 22. I started about a month after graduating from Middlebury, and so it was a pretty interesting 1 month go home to New York City, where I'm from, and pack up my bags and then move out to Uganda. And I think just in terms of some of the conversations I had in preparation for this call, it was a really great experience, and one that I hope some of you in the room really repeat and do your own in different ways, in terms of just graduating from Middlebury and jumping right into social entrepreneurship, because I think it's a great field to come into with a lot of benefits in terms of having a different career trajectory than other people who come right out of college. It was a very unique experience. I came to Uganda 22 and started managing a team of 5, and I was the youngest on the staff. So it's a totally different experience than, I think, going into a well-established organization and maybe being just another number in the room. So just by way of introduction, I really believe a lot in social entrepreneurship as a field that is very promising for young people specifically. And part of what we do at Educate is to teach social entrepreneurship to Ugandan youth as well. And our youth that we work with are graduating from high school. And even to them, we say it's a great career opportunity. And that's mainly because in Uganda, even if you go to university, the chance of you getting a job is around 30% in the formal sector. And so this informal sector, this startup sector, this entrepreneurial sector is really where I think a lot of growth can happen, both in Uganda and also in the US. John asked me to talk a little bit about our work with the government, and I think the context for that is Educate is really trying to build a model of what works in education. We don't want to be a project. I think some of you probably already know, but if you started working in the development sector as well, you'll notice a lot of nonprofit organizations are really contractors for different donors. And so their cycles depend on funding, the projects they start depend on funding. If the funder's interested in girls' education one day and boys' education the next day and maternal health the next day, switch a lot their focus. And Educate doesn't want to be that. We want to be a program with a well-established kind of solution to the problem that we found in Uganda. And that problem is that there's a mismatch between education and life after school. In school in Uganda, you learn the regions of Germany, you learn a lot of just totally irrelevant information, and go home to malaria, and go home to massive community problems, and go home to corruption, and go home to some of the worst road deaths in the world because of the infrastructure within Uganda. And so we felt like the real solution was leadership and entrepreneurship as a way of a practical education within Uganda. And so we really want to change the education system. That's our exit strategy. We don't want to exist forever. We want to make ourselves obsolete and ensure that after 5 or 10 years, maybe 10 years, educate's not even necessary in Uganda anymore because we transferred a lot of our learning into the national system. And so the success we've already had with that has been getting the Ugandan government to incorporate just one section of our program, the content on social entrepreneurship specifically, into the Ugandan national curriculum. And so for about 1 term, students learn social entrepreneurship the way Educate teaches it nationally if you take that course. And that was a really big challenge. It was not easy, but it's been transformative in the sense that there are now 50,000 students learning about social entrepreneurship from their regular teachers in their regular class in high school in Uganda. And so we're hoping for all the different aspects of our model to also be incorporated over time.
Angelica, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, and we can't wait to welcome you back on campus, non-virtually, as soon as that works for you. Before I get to Faith, with your blessing, everybody, I want to go to Lori Chickering, because Lori, I know these issues speak to you, particularly I think your career and your work with Educate Girls globally speaks to this issue of working public-private. I think there's an illusion in the social enterprise, social innovation space, call it what you will, that these amazing ideas can sort of do it on their own. But it doesn't work that way. The public sector is huge. The public sector has to work. The public sector needs to take advantage of innovators like Angelica and her colleagues. I love your exit strategy, Angelica. So Lori, as briefly as you can, if you can share your perspective on that, and again, how that builds on the comments we just heard about educate girls globally.
Is that better? Can you hear me now? Good. We believe that an awful lot of the reform activity in the world around education, and in fact, a lot of social needs in health and in other areas, is focused in areas where the work never scales. The reason is because the skill set that defines people who do the work is all defined by the retail level of the activity. If it's AIDS, it's doctors. If it's education reform, it's school teachers. It's people who can teach classes. All scale and sustainability, any real size, however, is in the government sector, which controls most of the playing field. And if you don't work on the government, what the government is doing, it is very hard to really accomplish anything at any real scales. And having said that, many people in this sphere, if you ask them if they would consider working with the government, their first reaction is to ask you if you've lost your mind. Because in many of these countries, they are worried that the corruption in the government system and the paralysis of government systems will infect and corrupt them, so they stay away from it. I oddly come from a conservative political background, but I am much more fundamentally a social and political entrepreneur, and I saw an opportunity to try and go right at education and see if my public policy background could be used to reform government schools. And so that was the background of it. And the result of it has been so powerful that governments are now paying for a substantial part of our program. In fact, I would say that within 5 years, many governments will pay for the entire cost of our program because at a tiny fraction of the cost of education, we are really delivering major changes in education. The most discussion of education is about the supply side. It's about education reform. It's about teacher training. It's about curriculum reform. There's very little discussion of the demand side. And this is a very serious shortcoming, we think. And Educate Girls Globally has organized its program in substantial part to empower communities and girls and people receiving education to play an active role as producers of it, as co-producers. They're not just passive people who are being fixed by experts who come in and teach them things and do things to them. We don't believe that that is a sustainable or very deep way of doing it. And in fact, I would say it even more powerfully that a fundamental objective of EGG is to promote entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, among the most traditional communities in the world. And the results of it are extraordinary. In one place, we expanded from 50 to 500 schools in a 2-year period. And at the end of 2 years, 178 of the 500 schools had clean water that did not have it before. We give nobody any money. Our only currency is empowerment. And these communities did a whole series of things that simply changed changed their circumstance, changed their sense of possibility, and changed not only the men's view of girls, but the girls' view of themselves. Girls who were afraid from the culture to speak up in front of boys came to believe they had a right to education, that they could succeed in it. And if you don't do that, you don't have a chance of reaching these people. No fiddling with the demand side, supply side alone is going to accomplish that. I'm thrilled to be here, and I think maybe I've taken up more time than you have to for my soundbite.
On the contrary, Lori, that was both deep and fascinating and succinct. So thank you so much. And, we have, you may know if you've seen our program online, that again, our keynote last night was from another alum, class of 2011, Shabana Basish Rashid. And we have in our presence many of the graduates of her school, the School of Leadership in Afghanistan. And what you just said about educating girls globally speaks so well to their experience. It was a magical night last night as we not only heard from Shabana, but two of her students, and realized that what SOLA represents is one investment at a time, and one extraordinary human being after another. And so it's been an honor to be in their presence, and their experience is certainly echoes by what you see. In fact, you SOLA students should know that what I do as a professor is just call on people. So be forewarned that soon I would love it if one of you could come up here to the stage in our Q&A and share your perspective on what we heard today. Okay, so get ready. With that, I turn to Faith. And Faith, I just want to say this by way of introduction. You don't know this, but we're brothers. Because when I asked you a question in your Google Hangout about 40 minutes into it the other day, you captured precisely the way I hope to teach. And I really mean it. I sort of had a shiver run down my spine because you put it so well in terms of the philosophy of ALA and why it's so important. And as I wrote to you in the back and forth associated with that Hangout, that is what I aspire to. So I'm really honored to have you here, and I hope this is the beginning of a long collaboration between Middlebury and ALA. And with that, please join us.
Well, good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening to you, wherever you're joining us from. For me, it's good evening, and I'm sure that's a little weird because we're on the other end of the world. Thank you very much for the great introduction. My name is Faith Abiodun, and I have the great honor of working at African Leadership Academy, where I serve as Communications Associate. It's been a fabulous time for me doing the work that I do because I get the great privilege of working with fantastic young people every single day. One of whom I did not have the privilege to meet when she was with us, but she's now with you. Jihad Ajuji is one of our very, very popular alums, and we speak about her every single day and the work that she's doing in Morocco and right there with you. So we're very excited to have folks like Jihad having graduated from African Leadership Academy and continue to take forward the work that we do. So very quickly, what does ALA do? What is the vision behind ALA? African Leadership Academy was conceptualized first in 2004 and established in 2008 to combat the challenge that all Africans face and the one thing we complain about the most, which is leadership. And I'm sure most people come up with the concept of political leadership when they hear leadership, but we are much more than political leadership. We believe in an entrepreneurial mindset in every sphere of life, and that's what we advocate. What John was mentioning earlier is our model of teaching, or the philosophy behind our educational approach, which is the Socratic method of teaching. We believe so much in young people having influence or having a part in the work they do. The core of our curriculum is built around entrepreneurial leadership, but beyond that, we do African studies, and some of our students go through the Cambridge program, but there is a lot more to it that I will never get to even if I had an hour to talk about this. What we do is to bring together 100 young people from across Africa every single year for a 2-year program with us on our campus, and indeed the entry into a lifelong network. Our young leaders come to us from most countries across the continent. There are only about 2 or 3 countries right now that we do not have representation from. And for me, it has been fabulous just having these young people come together in this space where they're able to continually innovate and think about the continent as a whole and the roles they will play in changing the story of Africa. Folks like Jihad went through the program of the Entrepreneurial Leadership Curriculum, in which they had to learn the BUILD curriculum. BUILD right there is an acronym, B-U-I-L-D, which is at the heart of how we think about problem solving. The B right there stands for belief, which is starting with a person. We believe that anyone who's going to be a change maker must be accurately prepared for the job in which they're going to be effective. So B there is working with a person, believe that you have the capacity to influence change. U there stands for understand. which means if you're going to be innovative in any space, you've got to understand that space as much as possible. And education being one space in which we all want to be innovative, you've got to interact with students and parents and teachers and the wider society to understand what are the needs. How do we connect education to life to ensure that everyone who comes out of the school system is well equipped to be functional in society, to be functional in their families, functional on their jobs, to be functional in the countries and in the continent in which they're present. There is invent. So having worked with yourself, having understood the society in which you want to operate, then you can invent a solution to the challenge that you've identified. But beyond inventing, you've got to listen again for feedback. So we're doing this whole process, advising entrepreneurs not to have solutions-based approaches to problem solving. Do not just come up with an idea of how you want to change the society. You've got to continually interact with the people whom you want to work with to ensure that they have full buy-in, or you have their buy-in into the project that you want to work on. And then finally, if you've got that feedback and you've gone through the process of continuous iteration, you can then deliver a solution to the society in which you work. So that's the build curriculum in a short form. But then that's just one of the things we do. A very good component of our model also is the student enterprise program. One of the things that Jihad also did very well. All of our young leaders have practical experience in running enterprises. And Jihad was the CEO actually of the enterprise that does all ALA merchandise. The brand are t-shirts or sweaters or mugs, every single thing that they sell off to our guests and to visitors to our campus. It's fabulous having students own that process. Right now there are 18 different enterprises being operated in our campus. And the young leaders who work in these enterprises are taken through the whole process of being business people, understanding what it's like to run these enterprises. They have their boards of directors who are full business professionals in South Africa. They have the audited financial statements every year. They give their annual reports. The whole gamut of running a business is what they go through. And for us, that's very exciting, seeing them practice some of these things. When they're done with us on campus, after the process of being here, they go off to universities as Jihad did. And then they connect with us over the course of their lifetime. We expect every one of them to be back in Africa by the age of 25 to put to use all the tools that they've gathered from their work in the universities in which they have studied, the conferences at which they've participated, and every single thing they've done. We want them to come back to Africa and then begin to plug in the work that they're doing. And so here's our excitement around this. Our first set of graduates will be leaving university in this year, this summer, and then we've got about 60 of them leaving university right now. They are already beginning to come back. A good number of them have got jobs on the continent already that we have been able to help them get. And so they're coming back to Africa and we're beginning to see the real impact of the work they're doing. So I could go on forever and talk about ALA, but I'm sure that the more we have these interactions, I'll open up for questions from you, and I hope that we can talk a little bit more about the work we do and our model.
Faith, that was perfect. Thank you so much. And let me just jump in here, if I might, with a bit of a weakness of this setup, is that we have 6 extraordinary people with us, and we're only doing this for an hour. So if you do the arithmetic, we can only hear from so many of you. So let me thank you for that, and for being good listeners on this and being attentive to each other. Let me also note that another opportunity to share your work through our center and through Google and so forth is to complete a Google Hangout with our students. 3 of you have already done that. We began with Angela and Lori earlier in the week. We then had Faith with the African Leadership Academy, and we ended a couple of days ago with James Welton, Coder Dojo. For technological reasons, we haven't yet been able to do that yet with Angelica and her colleagues at Educate, nor with Urvashi. And then our 6th group was not able to join us today. That was a snafu on our end, Mike O'Brien. So what we're hoping for, particularly because this particular Hangout doesn't do justice to the work that each one of you is doing, is to complete that full set with the blessing, particularly Urvashi, you, and Angelica. And eventually we'd like to have 6 standalone Hangouts on our website, and we would promote and really be quite honored to have helped to create in terms of sharing your work. So I'm just going to do a time check. We have less than 10 minutes, and we'll make the most of it. I want to first turn to our audience again, so they can give a stunning round of applause to our guests. So if that student from Hamilton can come up and join us right now, that would be great. No, you need to come here. In the meantime, just as a preview, David, at some point I want you, before we finish, to touch on your second point, I believe it was, about nature. Because we haven't touched on that, and I think that's really important. So just a heads up that I want to bring that in before we finish up. Okay, so yet again, we're trying something. Let's see if this works. I'm going to pass the microphone to somebody else.
Hi there. I'm Amy. I'm from Hamilton College. I'm a senior. Thank you so much for being with us online. And also a commencement to you for going through all the obstacles. Entrepreneurship is such a clutch word. It's real easy to say, but there's a lot of obstacles that you guys face to do what you're doing, so I just really commend you for that. And because I'm a senior, I'm coming with you from a practical perspective. Graduation is staring me at the face, and I definitely want to do this, but I have no idea how I'm going to eat. So my practical question is, how do you guys eat? How do you guys survive? And any tips for soon to graduate students? Thanks.
Perfect, thanks. And if you want to answer that because of our muting situation, just kind of wave your hand wildly.
Okay. Am I live?
Yes.
Hello?
You're on.
Oh, I think you can hear me. If so. So after graduating from Middlebury, I started 3 different social enterprises. One of which was, the revenue stream, because it wasn't in place yet, we tried to win awards and fellowships. And I'll be very honest with you that I worked really hard for 4 years to go into debt. And I don't necessarily recommend that to everyone. I would actually recommend having a steady source of income from another place that you can do maybe part-time while you work on a passion project with the eye of developing your resume for the future. That also being said, not everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. And there are plenty of opportunities to get paid, to do well and do good for organizations that need your help, that need top talent. And one of the places to find those jobs is, of course, through like the Middlebury Career Center or lists like Idealist, or I'm going to mention the organization that I'm helping to build, Game Changers 500. If you go to our website, for example, you can look at any organization that's tackling an issue that's relevant to you, and they have job openings, many of them. That being said, if you're trying to start your own organization, see if you can get help getting it funded through fellowships, and or that you have some leeway from another source of income.
Great, thank you.
Lawrence is raising his hand.
Well, we're just going to throw another question at you, just so we can get as many voices in the conversation. So here's a question.
Hi, my name is Kamala. I'm from SOLA School of Leadership of Afghanistan. SOLA is a school which helps Afghan young women and to get education and be future leaders of Afghanistan. So actually, sorry, my question is from James Hamilton. Okay, my question, and whatever you all do is a great work, and I think all the world is thankful of you all. And my question is from Mr. Hamilton. As I just got some information that your organization CEO is now only covering 27 countries. So my question is, do you have any plan that you can, that your organization covers more countries, such as Afghanistan? Thank you.
So she's directing the question to James.
Okay.
I'm going to mute this mic now.
Perfect. So if I heard that correctly, because I'm also kind of on a small bit of a bad internet connection, You were talking about like expanding to more countries, and this is correct in how you go about doing it? Did I hear the question correctly?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect, that's a thumbs up. Yeah, so initially when we first started, we didn't actually expect that it would be this like big international thing. Like we wanted just to create like one place that was like super good, like exactly what we wanted. And I always use this analogy, like the reason that your mom's apple pie tastes so much better than McDonald's apple pie is because it's made with love. And then as we scaled, you know, we just kind of did it very naturally, and but we also had to be cognizant of a whole bunch of cultural issues. Like for example, like Coder Dojo is like 100% free, and like we keep a attitude of money out of it. But when you get Japan, they use like money to pay for things all more like symbolically. Not that you know actually you know is the requirement to fund it, but to show that they like illustrate value of what they're doing. So most definitely we are continuing to spread out. We're working with the US State Department now to spread out across Africa, for example. So with like Tanzania and Nigeria, the first two places we're setting up sessions. And the biggest thing we've learned about spreading it is you kind of have to know your base to a degree. So we know that we like kick ass at teaching kids how to code. We know that we got the pedagogy, like resources down. And then we just try and pick local partners in various countries to help bring it there, to explain the cultural nuances, the things that, you know, just the things that we wouldn't know. So most definitely when you're tackling international growth, strategically pick the partners who will know people on the ground, who will know the cultural issues, and just kind of know what you bring to the table and what they can do as well. So like for example, when we came to America, we partnered with a company called GitHub, who are like the biggest code hosting, code collaboration company in the world. So like a perfect partner to come to America with. So I hope that kind of answered your question in a way for this.
Yes, it does, James. Thank you. That does answer the question. Thank you so much, James. I think we want to move towards wrapping it up, but I want to do something that we had hoped for, and if what I just proposed doesn't happen, there's one more hand in the audience. Armel, bear with me. Come on up, just in case we can get you in on that. But before that, I want to give you all, as Google Plus Hangout panelists, an opportunity to perhaps ask a question of each other. So if you would like to ask a question of somebody else, you may start to wave your hand quite energetically right now. Okay, so I'm going to go to our hand waver, Urvashi, I think that was.
Yes. First of all, I really want to congratulate all the panelists. I'm so inspired by all the work you're doing. And my question, or actually request to both you, Angela and Lawrence, is that I think there's a lot of synergy in our work, because we work a lot with communities and try to get them to collaborate and become advocates for girls, for their daughters' education as much as we are. And since we're working in the same space and in the same geography, I was wondering if we could join hands and perhaps make a stronger solution for the business. I reach out to both of you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm wondering how we can get in touch, and I will be checking you out on your websites, etc., and finding a way to connect and work together.
Good. Great. We look forward to it.
Okay.
So in my class, in some ways, the key reading is by the environmental historian William Cronin. And if you have not read it, do read it. You can find a PDF online. It's called Only Connect. And that is what you do in the liberal arts, according to Dr. Cronin. That is what social entrepreneurs do. I am so proud just to have seen a connection happen through our Google Plus. I'm going to have one last brief question from Armel, one of our favorite students on this campus. He's going to ask a brief question, and I think it's to a couple of us, and then we'll just have a wrap up. David, let's propose to get to your environmental point at another time, because I want to respect everybody's time. So Armel is going to have a brief question. I'll say some final words, and then we'll have one last round of applause to thank our participants.
Hello, everyone. I feel so great to get to talk to you guys, because you all are amazing. So my name is Armel, and I'm a sophomore here. I'm from Burundi. A couple of hours south of Uganda. So my question is specifically for Angelica and Faith. Since you guys both encourage entrepreneurship and encourage your students or people you work with to start their own companies and businesses, where do you find adequate consulting or financial support to actually help them start their businesses? Because last summer I got a grant from the Middlebury Center for Social Entrepreneurship, and my project was working with students to help them turn their ideas into action, which works along what Angelica and what Faith does with ALA, and it would be great to get to know your insights about this. Thank you so much.
Okay, did you want me to go first? I'm not sure how this works. Okay, great. So we are very fortunate to have been supported in the last couple of years by several organizations across the world. We have many of the top companies in the world, Google, the Coca-Cola, the Standard Banks, the McKinseys, who are very much interested in our model, which is again coming out of the great networking that we do as an institution. So we have great institutional support from many companies, many NGOs, many foundations, many families across the world that have come to support the work that we do. We encourage our entrepreneurs on campus to start first with the immediate communities. So if they've been able to identify challenges on our campus firstly that they intend to solve, that's their first audience for their sales. For instance, what I mentioned about the enterprise that Jihad helped to establish, Footprints Limited, what they do is identify that lots and lots of people come to our campus to visit. How then do we leverage that into generating income? So what they've done has been to produce merchandise and display all around our campus and then sell to guests who come to campus and then sell to faculty members who are going to travel home for holidays and tell their family members about ALA. So that's one great outreach model that they've had, and it's working very successfully. But on the whole, if you're asking about how we finance the institution and how our fundraising is working, what we've done firstly has been to invest a lot in internally generated income. We've grown from 98% of our expenses being funded by donors in the last 4 years to about 86, 82 at the moment, and we're driving for 60% in the next 10 years. So we're doing very well with internally generated income, but again, we're also diversifying our donor base and ensuring that we keep the donors we have very happy and continually reach out to new donors. So it's a whole gamut of fundraising. Keep the current donors you have happy, continually reach out to new donors, and then ensure that you're able to generate enough income by the work you do. I hope that's helpful.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. So we are that way. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, so we're about the exact opposite of our good friends at ALA. We don't have a lot of funding, don't have a lot of diversity of that funding, and don't have a lot to kind of pull from. It's a very kind of bootstrap, low-level entrepreneurship, starting with very little capital kind of situation that we're dealing with in Uganda and with the students that we work with. Some of our most successful students actually have received sponsorship to go to ALA, so we have really close ties with them. They're kind of our big brothers. But I think in our situation, we're working with students who literally picking seeds from the ground, putting them in recycled plastic bags and starting a seedling project so that they can get their starting capital. We don't have the funds to give it to them, and so they're really starting from as local and as little as possible as 0 shillings, which is the currency in Uganda. And I guess to talk a little bit about David's point in terms of the environment, a lot of our projects are agriculture-based, very low-level agriculture. It'll start off with one bird, one goat, you know, one seedling project, one tree, to be honest. But what we do with those constraints is we incredibly encourage groups, and that's also what I would say to the other question about starting as a social entrepreneur, even from your context in the US, right after you graduate. I would highly recommend do not start alone. Do not try and find the fellowships and the funding alone. Find other really great, really motivated people who can balance out that team and support you, because there's no way I would have been able to afford to start Educate by myself. And in a lot of ways, our students can't afford to start their social enterprises or their businesses by themselves as well. So I think starting in groups is number one. I think also reinvesting the funds within your enterprise is really important, and starting perhaps with something that feeds the funds into that. So maybe your passion isn't starting a seedling project or whatever it is, but that's what you can do at the moment with the funds that you have. So later on, do something bigger. And so that's also how Educate started. We started with very little funding, 20 little schools and little clubs, and we're able to grow into the organization that we are now over time. And that definitely took, 5 years of learning how to fundraise, learning how to make the impact, learning how to talk to donors, and starting from the ground up. So that would be my advice, is to make sure you emphasize groups, make sure you emphasize starting with what you have, and keeping that trajectory in mind, that you're not going to start off with all the resources at once. And I think capital is a very important challenge. Finding capital, finding investors, getting the skill set of inspiring other people to believe in your project. And so that's another reason why, even if we did have the money, we wouldn't give it to our students. We want to make sure that they really have a commitment to their project and put their own skin in the game to make sure they're committed to the project as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angelica. If you couldn't hear Armel, he just thanked you, and that was fantastic. I had breakfast with one of our dear, trusted colleagues, Jesse Fink, who's on our advisory group, and during the breakfast we talked about impact investing and the sources of capital to which you just alluded. Jesse and I both agreed that impact investing is a term that people are throwing around without maybe a whole lot of knowledge in too many cases. But the great news is that foundations, let's say, do believe in these kinds of investments. So I'm glad you raised that point in terms of looking for sources of capital. I'm going to turn the screen now to our audience. And in doing so, let me say something to the folks who have joined us via Google Plus. In this audience is a remarkable bunch of innovators in the field of education. That includes another one of our advisors, Hal Colston, who's here, a leader now of Partnership for Change in Vermont. And if you get a chance to Google their website, it's an extraordinary manifestation of building change from within based on values that we have in our case here in Vermont. I also do have my colleague Jessica Holmes, who has been an innovator from within here at Middlebury, taking Midcore to whole new heights, and believe me, the students who are here from Midcore are receiving a form of education that's unprecedented. It's another great example of innovation. So in other words, as you all in the Google Hangout look out, know that many innovators sort of cut from your cloth are with us too. I just want to finish by, again, reiterating my gratitude for our amazing technical team. Not only did they pull this together, they didn't seem to put out an ounce of sweat as we dealt with what we dealt with over the last hour. So give them another round of applause. Thank you all. As an educator myself, I found this amazing. Learned so much, and I look forward to watching this again on YouTube and laughing at how dorky I look on screen. So Angela Tiaghi and Lori Chickering of Educate Girls Globally, James Welton of Coder Dojo, Ravashi Sani of Digital Study Hall Foundation, Angelica Town, class of 2008 of Educate, and Faith Abyadan of the African Leadership Academy. thank you so much for your time and effort and sharing your wisdom and experience. One last round of applause, please. We'll close this Google Plus Hangout, maybe the first annual, who knows. And off to lunch, 2 o'clock, across the way, you'll see 4 other